Hello and welcome to episode 338 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now today's guest is a familiar guest to Mark and Me because now this will be their fourth time of appearing on the podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to announce that on today's episode I'm joined by my favourite songwriter on the planet, Dustin Kensrue from the incredible band Thrice. On today's episode, we sit down backstage in Manchester just before they did their Artist in the Ambulance tour. Yep, they played the album in its entirety plus another 7 or 8 tracks. But before the show, I was lucky enough to sit down with Tepe, and that interview came out only a week ago. But this is the second part with Dustin, and my God, it's absolutely awesome. Also during this interview, we get to sit and talk about his brand new album, Desert Dreaming, in great detail. The album's out on April the 5th. I've been spinning it for the last few weeks and I absolutely love it. And we get to talk about it in great detail on today's interview, and that'll be coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. But as always, I always like to use the intro on my podcast to talk about my last guest. On episode 337, I was joined by the legendary director, Philip Noyce. This was huge. Thank you to everyone that took the time to listen and share this. So many people on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram were loving it, and I just want to say now how much it means to me to see the massive response, and also Philip taking the time to share it as well. It really goes down a treat. Now, this interview, as you're listening to it, has just been released a couple of days after the video went live on YouTube of the exact interview. So if you want to visually see it, you can go on YouTube and watch me and Dustin sitting backstage in one of the dressing rooms in Manchester and talking all about Thrice. The interview's only been up 2 days and has already hit nearly 5,500 streams, so thank you so much to everyone that's listened and took the time to watch. But to the true typical fans that like to listen to the podcasts, this is for you. And hey, I can't wait to share it, so I think the best thing to do right now is to get straight to it. So here's me and Dustin talking all things music.
Dynamite clenched in our teeth, swinging high out over the canyon. Dynamite clenched in our teeth with the high skaters.
So Dustin,
Hello.
welcome back on the Mark and Me podcast. There's some good news. You're the first guest now to be on 4 times.
Wow.
It was between you, Neil Blomkamp, the film director, and Alex Winter. We're all on 3.
Well, thank you for putting me over the top.
Does it feel like you've achieved everything you've set out now in life? This is it.
I wrote it down in my journal like 10 years ago, you know.
Just getting your levels nice and beautiful. How's that sound?
Hello, hello.
Bit louder?
Hello, hello.
There we go. So,
Talk low.
how's that? Is that good? Comfy? Yes. What I want to do today is focus a lot more on your solo album. As people are watching this, hopefully it's just about to be able to go out there and stream and buy. I do want to quickly just talk a couple of minutes about Thrice because we're sat here before your show in Manchester, and I just interviewed Tepe, and I still can't believe it's over 20 years that The Ambulance came out. I just think The Artist in the Ambulance, to be 20 years old, blows my mind. But from your perspective, does it feel that long ago? Does it feel like it has been 2 decades since you put that vocal down on that take?
It's one of those weird things that I'm sure Tepe said something similar, but it's kind of surreal. Like it feels like that wasn't that long ago, and also way longer in some sense. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's half a life ago. So it definitely, I feel like the main judge of time there is just like I had to just come into, adulthood, and now I've had another whole half a life of adulthood. So yeah, it's wild.
It blows my mind. Without sounding like a fanboy, Thrice, you know this, are my favourite band. I've listened to you guys since the start, and I've seen you evolve, and all my favourite bands in music, Manchester Orchestra, Paramore, Radiohead, Thrice, they've all got something in common. You never play it safe. I never know what I'm going to get from the next album. And what I really love about you guys is that for each era and each album, I see you've evolved as musicians, as people, as human beings. The maturities come with the music. And that evolvement that you go through and those stages reflect so well. So what's it like to now go back 20 years and learn those songs where some of them you've probably never played for 15 years because not every song on that album gets on the set list. Does it feel like a step back because it was so long ago, or is it actually quite nostalgic and kind of quite fun to revisit those early days?
It is fun, and I think it could be. I mean, it's our third record, so there's some interesting things on the first. There's a lot of interesting things on the second. Not all of which are good, interesting things, I think. I think with Artist in the Ambulance, I think, I'm proud of the whole record. None of it feels weird to play live. And the songs, I think they hold up, and they hold up especially how we play them now. It's not like they're drastically different, but they're just kind of settled in a little more. The tones are better. We play better. I definitely sing better. So it's actually really fun to have that block in the set that just flows, like everything kind of feels like it really fits together because that album has a lot of the same tuning, and we were just in a headspace when we wrote it, so it all fits, and it's been a lot of fun.
With the re-release of the album, the Revisited, where you got to re-record, and I didn't realize this till only a couple of weeks ago, Incubus are doing the same with Morning View. The main noticeable difference, and I'm not just saying this because you're sat here, but is the vocal. The drums aren't going to sound that much different when it's mic'd up and it's still a snare drum. But you as a vocalist have improved and matured and learnt new techniques, and you've got more of a gravelly sound. And to go back and then sing those songs again, was it a conscious effort to not try and revisit the songs in that mindset and that kind of mental state? Were you just, I want to sing how I would sing them today live?
The whole way we approached, I think, everything on the record was just how would we play this now, and not really trying to not do something that we had done. So vocally, it's very much that. And I don't think I learned how to sing on a record until the Alchemy Index. I think before that, I didn't know how to be comfortable enough to push for something in the studio, because you're just trying to, you're working with a producer and you're like, I'm trying to get the notes, it always feels very different, like being in a studio setting than like on stage. Like I rarely lose my voice on stage, but like recording, like for whatever reason, it just, the way you're hearing yourself, whatever, you at least I burn out my voice a lot easier. So it's just a different kind of animal. But on Alchemy Index, I worked with, Tepe engineering it. And so it was a little more just laid back, and it was on our schedule. And I was like, I'm going to try that different. I'm going to try to get this kind of vibe on it. And so I was able to learn how to be like, okay, I can work to get the kind of take I want, not just hit the right notes, which I always felt like I just had to do before. It's intimidating being in a studio, like, especially when you're newer to it. So, so being, having had that experience now, I feel much more comfortable in there. And so approaching this record is just like, all right, I'm just going to sing it. And
whose idea was it to get all your friends involved and kind of people that have been like the architects and stuff like that to get involved in doing guest appearances? Was it just a conscious effort because of the history you wanted to kind of reflect with the times you're at now, or was it just an excuse to get your friends involved in the album?
It was kind of just like, this would be fun.
Yeah.
I don't know whose idea it was specifically, but just thought of friends who either were, friends from back when we were doing that record originally, or new people we'd met who were fans, or so yeah, it was a lot of fun. I wish we could have done all of them in our studio. Most of them were kind of flown in from where everyone lives. But
would you do it with any of the albums? Would you think like it's a while off yet, but when it's the 20th anniversary of Beggars, would you now think let's redo that, or are you kind of like it should just be for this one-off?
There's just a lot of specific reasons why this one works.
Beggars is flawless to me. Like, please don't touch it, because
it's also we recorded it ourselves, so and it was past that period where I think we'd learned a lot of things and implemented them.
Yeah, of course.
So that's one where I, like we could do it, but I don't think it would accomplish anything really. Like, we had learned how to play looser in the studio. We had learned what tones we liked, and like that record has specific tones for that record anyway, or like, so I kind of feel like the only one I personally, I haven't talked to them about it, would redo would maybe be Visu, but that's mostly because I don't like my vocals on the record, and I think everything else is kind of great. So
you don't like your vocals on that album?
No, I mean they're fine.
Fine. You're too harsh on yourself.
No, if you listen to the difference between my singing on Alchemy, I think it's a lot different. There's a level of comfort there that I don't know.
It was nice seeing you do the headline set at 2000 Trees and then hearing you now singing those songs. It was a different feeling. It just felt, I don't know, there was just something different. There was a different vibe.
Yeah. It's probably hard to quantify, but I don't know. That would be my take, is just because I don't think I would want to redo Illusion just because it's its own little animal and it makes sense for what it is.
Yeah.
And then anything after Visu, I think we kind of knew what we were doing. And so Visu is really the only one I would think about. But it's also like, for a lot of reasons, I don't know that I'd want to reapproach all the instruments anyway. Like, there's something special about what we did. Not that it's not that there's not something special about the original artist. Like, there were just issues we had, especially with the mix and stuff. So, but it seemed more fun to revisit the whole thing rather than mess with the mix that everyone's already used to for 20 years.
I was quite surprised today. So I was interviewing Tepe and I was like, Horizons East, last time I spoke to Dustin, Horizons West was just, for me, I thought it was going to be 6 months away. I really thought it was all wrapped up or ready to go. And he just said, we're probably going to start writing from scratch next week. Like, what the hell happened there? It just seems like...
It's a complicated issue. I mean, we thought we were going to just do back-to-back recordings. We had a lot of songs, but we're very particular and kind of harsh editors. So we got to the end of East and realized, we're like burnout on recording right now. Like, it takes a lot out of you mentally, and
you're doing it yourselves as well. I think some people that listen to you don't realize that Tepe's at the desk and you guys are doing it all in your own studio with your own setup.
Yeah, but even just the creative output, like it's fun and energizing, but it's also draining by the end. Like, and we're like, we don't have to do this right now. Like, we could wait, and we're all like, yeah, let's wait. So there are ideas that will definitely make it on that we're already in the mix and part of the kind of larger concept of the two records. But I'm excited to kind of just dive in and reevaluate and be kind of brutal about what we keep or don't keep, and and new ideas accumulate. So,
and I think also last time we spoke, you were talking to me about there was an album that you were working on. Was it with your brother?
Yeah,
some musical idea.
We're very bad at staying on
and I
task.
Thought that was going to come out, and that didn't. And I asked you about a follow up to Carry the Fire. And you were like, oh, there's nothing really happening at the moment. And then I went on, I think, Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, hang on a minute, there's an album, there's a tour, there's everything. Did you keep this top secret, or just everything change, or?
I think it was just the thing with my brother and I, like scheduling wise, and never was happening. And then I just started working more on solo stuff again. And
Yeah. So with the solo album, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if it'd be a direct kind of follow on from Carry the Fire. I thought it might just be the same sort of vibe and the same sort of feeling for the songs. And then you released your single, and I was like, okay, this is a lot more country. This wasn't what I was expecting at this point from you. What happened? Was it just a case of you're writing what you want to write right now, and that is the genre and the style and the sound?
Yeah, it just started to, at some point, fall into place that that's where the songs were going. Because I'm always kind of accumulating ideas, and there's a lot that are just, they're going to be a solo idea in one way or another. I'm just playing on acoustic guitar and doing voice memos, and so there's a lot of ideas. I mean, probably sifting through, over 100 at a time, like just
Wow.
trying to be like, all right, which ones are sticking with me, whatever. And then also trying to feel out where do those songs want to go. And at some point, and I've also just been, kind of exponentially listening to more kind of country and Western stuff as time's gone. Like I hated that stuff growing up. I was
going to say, when I've talked to you about, we've mentioned we talked 4 times, but I didn't know you'd listened to country and Western as a kid. You weren't like brought up on Dolly Parton or any of these albums. You never mentioned it on our interview. So was it quite a recent thing that?
Well, only thing I was exposed to when I was young was pop country, like on the radio in the 90s and stuff, which is not good. And I mean, from my perspective, it's not my vibe. I'll say that. I mean, obviously everyone's very talented.
But it's not good.
It's not my vibe. It just got real slick, and so, but I had, as a teenager, found my way into Johnny Cash and like Gene Autry, like old Western stuff, Patsy Cline. So there was stuff that I really loved, like that stuff was dear to me, but I didn't know anyone that liked it. I didn't know where to go with any of it. So I would find little things here and there. Got into like some alt country stuff, Whiskey Town, Wilco, Ryan Adams, like early Wilco,
Early Wilco is incredible.
It's great. I mean, it's all good, but yeah. So I would be finding things, but it wasn't like a huge well that I was able to draw from. And then I feel like with streaming and meeting a couple people that were into stuff, just started getting into more and more. Especially, I love like kind of 40s to 60s country stuff, and yeah, there's something about it that is very evocative to me. I think a lot of it, and my record reflects this, but there's a huge like sense of place within a lot of country and Western. And I think maybe the key thing that started piecing it all together for me was had re-fallen in love with the Southwest and the desert especially.
Yeah.
And, had just grown up in, Southern California is technically Mediterranean, but it's brownish. And very quickly, if you go inland, it becomes desert. And grew up going out to spend a lot of time with my grandparents out in Indio and Palm Desert area. And so I had this love of it, and then kind of, you get too familiar with something, you lose it. And then I lived in Seattle for a bit, and I was like, this is so green and beautiful. And I'd fly back and visit and be like, it's so brown. And once I was actually back, I absolutely fell in love with the desert again. And so I'm constantly going out and camping out there and heading out there, staying different places with my wife, my family. And those two things, like listening to more music and spending time out there, just started to coalesce into a feeling for the record that I was pushing for. I think the final kind of keystone that came into place was when I was talking to my mom about my grandparents and remembering that they had their honeymoon in Death Valley. And once like the phrase Death Valley honeymoon came into my head, I was like, that's a song I have to write. And
Write that one down.
That is the direction the record's going. So
I'm not going to even pretend I know a lot about country and western, but what I have noticed over the last few years is my music taste is a lot more collective, and I'm listening to everything. And I listened to Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves, and I realized the concept of just the music within country and western is all about the song and the songwriting and the lyrics and the heart and soul of the songs. So songs like Butterflies and everything. Just, have you heard this album and you're a fan? Or
I might have heard some. I don't.
yeah,
Definitely not.
It's just
a lot.
beautiful songs where you can just really appreciate the musicianship and just the soul of the vocal. And I know it's only been today I've listened to the full album of yours, but or even off the single, it marries so well with your vocal. It's like, even though I love Thrice more than anything, and I love you screaming, and I love all the stuff you've done, it's a match made in heaven. It's like you've matured your voice to now marry up with this country and western genre, and the songs feel more warm, more soul, more.
Yeah, and this record especially, like I made a decision to not. There's only one point in one song where I push my vocal at all.
Yeah.
And it's to effect in that song, and it works well. But I wanted. There's something about a lot of the old country tunes where they feel that there's a warmth, there's a home kind of feel to it. And so I think I wanted to focus on, I'm going to let the song do the talking, and I'm going to sing in a way that feels like really at home in that place. As opposed to, like, I know what I can do with my voice, like,
Yeah.
and I've gotten to know what I can do with Thrice, or like playing with just an acoustic guitar, and I can really push dynamics, and that's neat. But I wanted to kind of push the opposite direction on this and be like, how much can I do with just crafting the song well and getting a great vocal, but not letting the vocal be the thing that's trying to sell it all, you know?
Is it, I know
yeah.
it's cheesy, but is it just a case of less is more? You're just letting stuff breathe. You're not like, oh, we'll add more music in, we'll extra layers of guitar, and we'll add this. Are you just letting the song tell the story and your vocal just be an instrument instead of the lead?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think about it is I literally was just trying to think, what is the vibe I want someone to have listening to this record? And like, there's a relaxed kind of, I don't know, maybe the warmth is the right term, or it's just, I didn't want a lot of intensity on it.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to put it on and have it feel like an old friend. And yeah, so it's just a different kind of listening experience.
For the listener already, it's I'm at home, it has to be on vinyl. It doesn't seem right to be on a fucking Spotify or Apple. I want to be able to put that needle down the stylus and hear the crackling. And I want a whiskey.
Yeah.
And I want to be having a nice cooked meal on a Sunday. And I can relax and just let your voice take me on a journey of kind of places I've never been.
That sounds great.
So let's get some whiskey. Yeah. Who can send us some bottles of whiskey? But I like the family connection. I like the fact that, you know, it's got all this nostalgia in it. And I think the fact that you've said you've gone there with your family and now you're experiencing the opposite of Seattle. The minimalistic life, not the big showbiz or lights or Starbucks everywhere, the nice, natural world, and just you can enjoy and kind of breathe that different air. It must be amazing for you and your daughters and wife just to have a different side of that life.
Yeah, we just went out there not too long ago. Just snapped kind of. We during the pandemic we got like a travel trailer, which was a terrible time to buy a travel trailer because they knew everybody was just like, everyone's trying to get away from everyone, so we're gonna just charge through the roof on this. But we did it, and it's been awesome. So we were just out at Joshua Tree, and kids had a blast exploring these caves, and it's lovely out there. Yeah. So the first song is about my grandparents, and then the last song is like a little vignette of a trip that me and my wife took out to Joshua Tree, and so kind of bookends the record with family. It's fun.
There's a lost art of a concept of an album. I think I know a lot of people when they're writing songs and being in bands now, it is all about the numbers and streaming and trying to get as many people to jump on an album. So I do appreciate bands that have to kind of hit 3 or 4 singles right at the start to try and grab your attention, because people are just so disposable of music, aren't they? They'll listen to a song on Spotify, then just delete and go on to the next one.
Yeah. I feel like we're not very good at playing whatever game is happening right now, but I do like concepts and records.
So for you to say it starts with your grandparents or your wife and you go on this journey, isn't that fucking wonderful that people are still writing albums with a process and kind of thought in their head that this should be listened to in its entirety and it's an actual journey of an album instead of just here's a hit single and a few B-sides and a bit of filler?
Yes, I think so. I really love albums. A single's great, but I love just getting into an album that has its own world that draws you in. And so this album is very much consciously, each song, they're not all going to explicitly reference the desert, but you can feel the setting. I mean, a lot of them do very explicitly, but I mean, say even like The Light of the Moon, like you start off here like in this dusty old town or something. So you like, because of the context of the rest of the record, you already have like, all right, I have a place now I'm thinking of, and the rest of the song now takes place in that kind of setting. Yeah, it's very, very setting and location oriented, as much as it is. There's other kind of themes flying through there, but yeah.
I this won't be a reason for you doing the writing or anything that kind of comes into it. But when I was sat, and so the listeners out there, we're backstage in Manchester, but I listened to the album today, and I kind of had a feeling of like From Dusk Till Dawn when they're driving out in the desert, or even like Fear and Loathing, where it's just a car going down a long road and there's just a journey ahead and you don't know where you're going, but it's just so minimal, just so intimate. And that's what I got from a couple of the songs. I'm not saying you sat and watched Quentin Tarantino in a strip bar and then wrote this album, but I'm saying that I got this feeling of that kind of era, that kind of place, the desert.
I think that's probably just because the people making those movies you're thinking of are doing a similar thing where that setting is a character, it's something that's pulling everything in an orbit, essentially. And this record's definitely doing that.
How do you kind of now build up to this? I've seen you've announced a US tour with loads of dates.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, is Dustin going to go out there? And I saw you in Birmingham many years ago, and it was a very stripped down, some of Carry the Fire, but you were doing stuff like Words in the Water, very minimalistic, just you and an acoustic. And I thought, is he going to try and take this album on the road as himself and just sit with an acoustic and play these songs? And then I saw the announcement with the poster that you're taking a full band out there. Was there a moment when you thought, shall I go this way, or was it, I'm going to play the album live how it should be performed?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be away for a month from my family, and it seems like there needs to be some kind of financial restitution for that. And I will say there's much less financial restitution taking a band out. But
buy a vinyl, buy a fucking CD.
But I think once people hear the record, it's meant to be. I mean, there will be cool stripped down versions of it, but like it's very much meant to be heard with the band. Like there's pedal steel on every song, and it's very important to the record, to the feel. So yeah, I just kind of bit the bullet and was like, I need to have a band out. It's going to be the experience that I want people to have as they see this live. Like there's just going to be a different energy. So
are you going to, I mean, this spoils it for some of the listeners out there, but everyone knows setlist anyway, but are you going to play stuff from Carry the Fire, the new album in its entirety, or are you going to kind of split the set up and throw some Thrice songs in as well? Or are you going to kind of, because I can't imagine like Words in the Water, and then one of your new tracks next to Carry the Fire.
Yeah, it's going to be leaning more towards the new record, but there'll definitely be stuff from Carry the Fire and from Please Come Home.
Yeah.
So not way more new stuff than those, but it'll be mostly solo stuff. Yeah.
One of the things that blew me away, even to the point where I said to my wife, I want to go now and get this tattooed on my arm, was the artwork for the poster and the album, but the skull with the smoke, and his collar's got your logo on, and the smoke makes up the kind of desert and everything. And I just thought, genuinely, it's one of the best pieces of art I've seen.
That's really great.
I loved it. I was like, my wife said, "You're not getting that tattooed on you."
I might get it on me,
I was like,
but
get it here and just be like, the skull could go up and the smoke makes up my arm. But the colors and everything, like, it's a really iconic album cover already, and it's not even out yet.
Yeah, so that's
the art.
Yeah, the art. So that's for like the tour stuff. So there'll be fun tour t-shirts with that and stuff. But yeah, my buddy Johnny did the art for the record, and it was really fun. We got to work really closely together, and he made me take a creative director credit on it. He's
cool.
like, he would do something, and I'd be like, okay, how about this? Change this around, and we'd just go back and forth, and it had a blast doing it. And got to do some stuff with the pre-order, like merch that, like, we made this keychain and these coasters we basically branded a bar for that, that's in the Death Valley Honeymoon song, and like made stuff for it.
Wasn't the keychain like a hotel keys kind of?
Yeah,
feel?
So there's like a hotel key. There's it's all kind of stuff out of the song, out of the bar that they go to, and so that was a ton of fun. But he's great. Yeah, so he sent me like a little sketch he did of that, the skull hat guy, and I was like,
so
that's cool. Yes, you need to do that. That's gonna be good.
Are you gonna get it tattooed?
I might. Yeah,
you should.
Yeah.
And obviously, you might not be allowed to tell me, but is there any hope or any vision in the future to bring that band over to here and we get to hear those songs? Or have I got to save up and try and justify to my wife that I'm going to America to hear this album?
I can't imagine how I'm going to afford to do it with the band over here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I won't make it over for some kind of solo something or other, but it's kind of barely working in the States. So
yeah,
I think you should maybe try to come to the States.
You heard it. Dustin told me I should go, and I could go to the Joshua Tree and everything while I'm there.
Yeah,
and kind of get the whole feel of it. That sounds pretty epic to me.
That'd be good.
And I suppose my kind of we're coming to the end now, but I wanted to know, even though this album's just about to be released, you got the tour, you're writing with Thrice, are you still getting a good work-life balance? Are you still happy that you can be there as a father, as a husband, and get the right kind of... Are you happy that there's a healthy balance now, and it's not like, oh, I need to neglect stuff and not do this? Do you feel it's all a kind of sensible balance for you now? Are you happy?
Yeah, I mean, touring is rough. Like, it's just, there's no way around it. So it's always a lot of work to try to stay connected and not have that be a total disruption to everything. I'd say it's, more balanced than it was at a certain point, but it's always kind of it's not a thing you can kind of sit back on. You got to work to make it stay balanced.
And my final question, you know what's coming, is I ask you every time for a song at the very end, any song in the world, but it's something that means something to you. You've given me 3 choices in the past. I think I've discovered new artists from it. I think maybe one of them was Manchester Orchestra.
Really?
That then made me absolutely love them, and I got to interview them, and they did a stripped down set here, and it was magical. And he did say to me, actually, Dustin's recorded a very cool new album. And that was like, oh, hang on, there's something there. But I was wondering if there's something new to bring to the world today that maybe could be played.
Let's look at the old
Spotify
phone
playlist.
What do we got? We could do this, yeah. So massively underrated is Pedro the Lion or David Bazan. Same thing, basically.
Yeah.
But amazing lyricist, amazing arranger, amazing musician, amazing vocals, like especially as he's progressed. But he's in the middle of doing like a series of records talking about his going through his childhood and like the places he lived. It's wild. It's really good. But check out Teenage Sequencer, and it's such a good vibe. It's just got like one bass note through the whole song and this really tasty little guitar movement, and his vocals are great. And it's just this story of him in junior high and the kiss he got from a girl, and then her breaking up with him the next day, and like it's lovely. It's really good.
And is that from a whole album?
That's from his latest one called Havasu.
Oh, nice. So it's quite recent.
Yeah, this is 2022.
Amazing. So what will happen now is I will go home, edit, start listening, and be like, I like this song, I like this album, and I'll spend the next 6 months down this kind of rabbit hole discovering.
There's a lot to discover.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah. So I mean, the early stuff is it's all really good. The early stuff feels like kind of happier sounding Elliott Smith, but the lyrics are still very sad. And then it changes a bit. I mean, some of his solo stuff gets more electronic at times, but it's always very soulful and thoughtful, and yeah, he's great.
You, I think for one of the interviews, mentioned Leonard Cohen as a songwriter, and my mind's gone blank, but is it Blue Raincoat?
Holy crap, you just made me think of, now I need a record of David Bazan just covering Leonard Cohen.
Wow.
That would be where it's at. Anyway.
You've suggested, is it Blue Rain, what's the song? Blue Raincoat, Blue something by Leonard Cohen?
I don't know, I'm terrible with names.
But you talked about Leonard Cohen, and I went down a rabbit hole, and I never realized just how good he was.
Dude, his lyrics are unreal.
But I was ignorant, and
I think a lot of people don't. I mean, he has some vibey versions of his own songs, but they're almost always better covered by someone. I mean,
yeah,
it just wasn't his strongest suit. His just writing is insane, though.
Jeff Buckley.
Yeah.
Dude, as we're sitting here, we're a couple of hours away from seeing you live, and I've seen the set list. I'm not telling Chris because he doesn't want to know the second half, but the fact you're doing 22 songs tonight, the whole album, and then a mix of incredible stuff, I'm so excited. You brought Palm Reader, one of the best British bands, with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be fucking awesome. But thank you for taking the time. This wasn't scheduled. I know your time's gold. I just want to say it means a lot, and I'm really glad that you're the first person to kind of do 4 for me, and it means a hell of a lot, dude.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. It did cost me an AirPod, because when you stopped me, I took my AirPods out, and then when I started walking, one fell out.
No.
And I realized like half a mile later, I went back, I found it.
You're joking.
I found it. I was like, I'm going to find it. And I found it, but it was smashed.
Now I feel awful.
That's okay.
Dude, this is not fair.
That's okay. It's worth it.
Okay, well, as long as you're worth it. Go into an Apple store and say you bought them, and they arrive broken, they'll swap for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude.
Cool. Cheers.
I know you're anxious to get home again to see her, but just right now I think I'd like to see our room, 'cause there's more I'd like to do with you than drink dear, 'cause you and I on our Death Valley honeymoon.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Dustin Kensrue. Like I said, you'll know by now if you're a fan of Mark and Me, this is my favourite band on the planet. I absolutely adore Dustin and I'm so grateful he took the time before a huge show to sit down and do this interview with me. I'd also like to say a massive thanks to my good friend Chris, who came along for the journey, was a great support, helped me out a lot backstage with the filming and the production of this podcast. So hey, I hope you enjoyed the day as much as me, and let's do it all again very soon. As you're listening to this podcast, it will only take a second of your time to share it on social media. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button. If you're on Twitter, hit the retweet button. And if you're on Instagram, like it or put it as part of your stories. This goes a massive way in helping promote the podcast and get the word out there. I don't have a marketing budget where I can go and pay Mark Zuckerberg thousands of pounds to get people to sponsor this post and people to see it. I can't possibly do that. But what I can do is ask you guys at home to just take a couple of minutes, which will really help the podcast get a large exposure and more people seeing it on their feeds. Also, I have a Patreon account, so if you've enjoyed today's episode and want to give me just a couple of pounds, it doesn't actually go into my pocket, it goes right back into the podcast, allows me to record more interviews for you guys at home, travel the country and host the podcast on stuff like Amazon Music, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All that costs money, so if you can help me and contribute to the making of the podcast, the link is on markandme.com. But in return, don't worry, I give you a welcome pack with stickers, you enter competition prizes that are only for people on Patreon, you get an exclusive badge that's only for people on Patreon, and I'm going to be really ramping up the free episodes very soon called The Lost Tapes, which are exclusive interviews only for people that support me on Patreon. Just before I go, I want to say a massive thank you again to everyone that supports the podcast. Not only that, to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. And if you're in the market for a home cinema surround sound system, TV, turntable, or anything like that, hit them up on richersounds.com. And finally, Desert Dreaming, the brand new album from Dustin Kensrue, is out on April the 5th. Go and listen to it, go and buy it. You will not regret it. It's absolutely awesome. Right, I'll be back in only a few days' time, as always, with another brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, take care, listen to Thrice, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
You said to meet by the gym after school before volleyball. Your grin poked through the door and we met lips as electric as the kiss was. The way you told me no when I leaned in for another thrilled me more. There goes nature pulling me along like a sequencer, right on time, turning me into a teenager. Will I always be a teenager now? Oh, I had a hard time falling asleep that night. Then woke up anxious to get to school and exchange some sweet nothing. But when I saw you in the hall without an explanation, you called it the last day of school, you pulled me aside, and I tried to play it cool. You'd watched me all year, and you knew Bill was wrong, and you wished you had stayed through